Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry, from the informative to the insane. Starring Ryan Rash.
I bring the razzle-dazzle to people's lives, whether they want to admit it or not.
And Dale Hummel.
Nothing we do can change the past, but everything we do can change the future.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel, along with co-star Ryan Rash.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ryan, current events.
I'm a little drunk. Not drunk.
Great. Just great.
Look, when you have these things at night and I'm on the road, you know what happens. It just is what it is. I've had a few cocktails. It's fine. I have current events. Would you like to hear
You are the one that requested the evening recording, I believe.
Well, because dude, I'm home for like 32 hours and then I'm on the road for 13 days. I don't even want to talk about it. Would you like to hear my current events? I have several.
Yes.
Biden fell down. He was giving a speech, a commencement address, I believe, and he bit the dust. We're not talking about stumbled, fell to the ground. They had to pick him up, all this other stuff. What I find very karma-esque about this is during the campaign, Trump went down like a slippery ramp, very slow, and Biden called him out that he was old and feeble and couldn't walk, and he wasn't, all this other stuff. Trump gingerly walked down a ramp. Biden fell down.
And I believe this was a slick ramp without handrails.
Right. No handrails, no nothing. Same place, doing the same thing. Biden falls down on the stage, flat surface. They claimed it was a sandbag. There is no evidence of a sandbag.
Yeah, I saw him pointing at
it. But there is no photographic or video evidence of there being a sandbag there.
He was pointing at something.
Yeah, he was pointing at something. But so I think that's a little karma-esque. I also find the New York Times the most comical because they in the last 48 hours, they wrote a story about Biden's fall, being fine, and all this other stuff, and yet the media blew the fall out of proportion. The next day, they write an article saying that his aides and the people that are his handlers keep him in Delaware on the weekends because he's an aging president that's lacking mental acuity, so they have to manage his schedule. How do you have those two articles in the same newspaper within 48 hours of each other?
I think they're undecided whether they want to stand up for him and protect him like they always have, or if they want to get him out of office so they can have a Democrat in the White House because he is not electable. That is my conclusion.
Clearly, they've got some confusion going on there. I mean, the most. But then the other current event I have, and then I'll let you, whatever. So I went off on Pride Month last week, and I'm going to try
just a little
try to contain myself, but. So we all know about the Bud Light debacle and all this other stuff, and then Ford has a new type of tough or whatever. So Target has now screwed up, and Target put this collection of Pride items together and whatever. And I'm not even going to get in.
Did you purchase them?
No, and I do love Target. I'm not going to lie, but I haven't been to Target in a while, but I haven't purchased any Pride items. And this one of the higher ups went on record saying where they screwed up, the article of the Pride items that led to their downfall in this thing. And I'm not even going to go into that because I do not want young children to understand this. But so they do this and they have this screw up with the Pride deal and the woke deal. Do you know what their next move is, Dale?
I do not.
They are announcing a children's clothing line, which is Lane Maxwell, or whatever her damn name is. Epstein's girlfriend/pimp.
Really?
Swear to God. Why? I checked this out. This is not fake news.
That's not logical.
How dumb can you be? You're literally losing millions of dollars in sales because you screwed up. And now we're going to have a children's clothing line with the girlfriend of the world's largest pedophile.
You don't think that's going to go well?
I think whoever is in charge of Target needs to hire me. That's what I think. I could help them out.
That is good. I am still surprised, and you've been very reserved on Gay Pride Month.
I'm not going to talk about Pride anymore. Not this week. Now we still got 2 more weeks of this shit. I can't.
Now, did you not notice there was a Pride parade in Indianapolis today? Do you not participate?
I was judging the Hereford show, so I didn't participate if there was one today. Yeah, no. A funny story. Funny story. So, about 3 years ago, I was in Indianapolis to judge the Indiana State Angus show. Same fairgrounds as I judged the Hereford show today. And I did not participate in any of the Pride functions. I did the same thing I always do. Went Capitol Grill, went to my favorite bar, Nikki Blaine's, all this other stuff. I leave the next morning to go judge the show. And I get about 2 blocks from my hotel. And cop pulls me over. I'm not doing anything, whatever. He walks up, told me that I failed to turn my signal on when I turned. Okay, I get that. Fine, whatever. This is also 6:45 in the morning. He sees me, sees all this, and decides that I am evidently still celebrating the pride of it all, which I was. Dude, my car got searched. All that. One of the very few shows I was ever late for was because of the fact this man thought I was some pride junkie, and he literally completely searched my car, my bag, all this stuff.
He was just stereotyping. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, right. Great. Mm-hmm. I had a great time.
That's a good story. I don't have a lot of current events. We're currently in the heart of sales season, running a bit behind on everything, including current events.
Lot 2 is better than Lot 1. But next.
Okay. With that, I have noticed, and I know we've gone over this many, many times, and I don't remember, Ryan, the first time I brought up China on the podcast, how far back that would have been.
Well, like episode 1.
Okay. Well, whatever episode it may be, there are far more people. There are more committees in Washington, D.C. paying attention to what China is doing around the world in their efforts to become a world power economically and militarily. So that's the good news. The bad news is, without getting your buddy Joe out of office, we can't withstand 2 more years. We don't have 2 years to wait around for China to kick us square in the ass. It just does not work. It's a terrible situation.
They're doing a real good job of it right now.
The other China insert into things, the FBI is turning over some of the documents they have on the Biden family's relationship with the CCP. That is to take place before this episode drops. I believe we're recording on a Sunday evening. It's going to take place on Monday, so it'll be interesting what is turned over to the House of Representatives in the file of pay to play, taking money from our adversaries. I don't even know where.
Joe Biden is not going to be allowed to be the Democratic presidential nominee. I'm going to go on the record now and say it. I don't know what's going to happen, but he's not going to.
I am with you, and I want to go on the record. And I don't like doing this.
I've said that for lots of time, but I'm going on the record right now.
Yes,
it's not going to happen.
So my comments, and you're going to enjoy this. I know that President Trump opens his mouth, and sometimes it just doesn't settle well with people.
Because he speaks the truth.
We're all aware of this. The problem that comes out is it's the best of the most, the best of the best. He's the best of everything. A little bit self-engorged, maybe.
He's got a little ego problem.
A little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up for it right now. Because if we want somebody in office that's going to implement the policy that needs implemented, there is no way that you're not going to get some of that. And we've talked about this before. And it's a very simple decision. We need President Trump back in the office. And I know I've talked about others that may be more electable in the general.
DeSantis. DeSantis, your boyfriend.
He may be one that
Who
I
is
thought
failing
was more electable.
miserably on the stump, by the way.
There are several out there that may be more appealing in the general election, and that concerns me. But if I could just hand point to somebody and say, hey, you're the next president, let's get out of this shit show and stand up for something, I want to go on the record. It's easily Trump. And I hope he gets there. He's not going to get beat in the Republican primary. So we really have no other.
I could point to, and I agree with you, and I'm trying to, I could point to 2 females that I think would do not as good a job of Trump, but better than the other 2 that aren't even in the race yet.
And who would those be?
Carrie Lake and your hot girl from South Dakota.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Maybe vice president potentials.
I don't know, but I have a lot of faith in those women, and the thing that those 2 ladies do, and Carrie Lake didn't get elected, so there's no record of her implementing policy. Christie, no, she's implemented it. It's there, and everybody can talk about what a great job DeSantis has done in Florida, and I am not discounting that whatsoever at all. There is no way that you can't say that Miss South Dakota hasn't done a better job in almost every area, and yet not got hung up on stuff that would hang her in the general election, like going too far the way DeSantis does, or snapping at reporters and all that other stuff. But they're not in the race. But I do think, and I have said for a long time, past time to be a woman president, it has to be the right one. Either one of those would work for me.
Now, with your comments towards DeSantis, and I get it, he has gone out on a limb that takes him a little away from popularity in the general, but just like Trump, he has a little bit of that in him. He's going to do that, and it just is what it is. And I believe he's probably second in line that's going to hold true to policy, and maybe as true as what Trump would. I don't know this yet, but it appears to be he's not afraid. Just here's what he wants to do, and he's going to do it. If it offends somebody, it offends somebody. And I think
that's fine.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's not a positive. I think that's fine. I think he is more out there than Trump in some areas of his policy, and that when we talk about this general election electability, I think now that he's in the race, those things are going to come more to the forefront. And again, like I talked about last week, I don't care if I'm gay or whatever. It's not a big deal to me. I am what I am. Like, he literally has a no, don't say gay legislation in Florida. That doesn't appeal to the masses. It just doesn't. Like,
so I don't even understand. You're not supposed to use the word gay?
It's not what the law is called, but what the slang term for it is, don't say gay. Like, there was, in terms of schools and all this other, and kids' education and all this other stuff, like, they don't want the term gay or homosexuality brought up and all that. And again, I don't care. It's not a big deal. I don't think you should push sexuality on any child, whether they're 3 or 18, but he goes too far in some areas. And I think that's a problem for him. And now that he's in the race, these things are going to come more to light. But I think the way that he's handled himself out in the trenches and on the stump and with reporters, the problems that I foresaw him having are coming to the forefront way quicker than I thought they would.
That bombshell that you say there's something you're missing has not dropped yet.
No, not yet, but it will. Trump has it. He's announced it. He's just waiting for it. But anyway.
So I didn't look at your Facebook profile. Did you put the rainbow on your profile for the month?
Oh, yeah, sure. Got right on top of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have noticed some of those. Have you seen those? Surely you've seen something.
Dale, I think I have like 3 gay friends on Facebook. Okay, so we all know I am the world's worst gay human being. It's fine. I accept it. I admit it. It's okay with it. I am attracted to men. That's all there is to it. That
enough
is-
talk. We don't need to talk about
That's
this any longer.
the end
Enough.
of my
Done.
gayness
DeSantis
right
says
there.
no more. No more. We're not going to discuss this.
There you go.
I have to apologize for last week's trending episode. I was bombarded with messages once it released, when it was obviously much too late to correct. I failed, and you failed as somebody interviewing or asking me questions to ask about the goat trends. Is there going to be goats shown with chains, halters, or just by hand like sheep in the future? We missed that one. Totally missed it.
I'm a terrible interviewer. All right.
Well, no, I'm going to take the blame. It was on my mind to talk about it, and I'm going to be very transparent.
You were as nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof.
I'm telling you,
do that by yourself.
I was
trying to go easy on you, and I was trying to not go easy on the people that I needed to talk about.
Very uncomfortable doing that in the position that I'm in. It just
I can't help it that my guest had to cancel because of a medical emergency. It's my fault.
Oh,
okay.
So I'm going to address very, very quickly halter versus chain versus.
We can just bring this up in the sheep thing because there's more sheep going on halters than ever.
We can do that,
and I'm fine with it.
Perfect place for it. Okay, with that, give us some BTR JLA news so we can continue forward.
All righty. So in the BTR, oh Lord, I hope I can see. I told you this is the problem. When I have cocktails, I have to find this stuff. Okay. So we have done the novice. We have done the junior. We are now moving into the intermediate division of things. And I have the top 10 intermediate cattle. And I have not looked at any of these names. So God be with you all. First place from Texas, Sarah Danley. Second place from Ohio, Tara Pov. Third place, last year's champion, Dallas Ritchie from Indiana. Fourth place, Haley, not Harry. I am sorry, Haley. Haley Cornett from Ohio. Fifth place, the other Pov sister, twin, Tatum Pov from Ohio. Sixth place, Tyler Lindsay, my buddy from Mississippi. Seventh place, Ellie Hurt from Texas. Eighth place, Faith Campa from Golden Valley, Arizona. She did very well last year. I don't remember exactly where she landed. Ninth place, Jalen Krimmel from Texas. And 10th place, Peter Grosetta, another award winner from last year from Arizona. So that is the top 10 intermediate cattle. I also want to say that on Facebook, starting this week and from here on out, something Dale suggested probably 6 months ago that I just didn't get around to, we are going to list a weekly top 10 with the kids' names, where they're from, and their points. That will start this week. Again, we're on Sunday, but that will happen starting this week. Sorry for the other kids that haven't got to get in on that, but it'll all work out in the end and round out. But that was Dale's suggestion. I screwed up on that, but we are getting that this week. The BTR JLA sponsor for the week is a new one of the first new ones for 2023. And it is also the sponsor of the question and answer session of the podcast. And it's Basic Animal Health. And we will talk more about them in the question and answer session. But we are very, very excited to have Basic Animal Health as a corporate top 10 jacket and a multiple regional sponsor. Basic Animal Health is a part of the Leonard family and their corporations, and we really, really appreciate them for stepping up and supporting the BTR JLA in that way.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing those posts to recognize the youth across the country. Thank you, ShowFresh H2O, for your continued support of the youth livestock industry and this podcast. Your generosity is recognized and appreciated. You can pick up ShowFresh H2O at your local supply store, supply trailer, or at swampfox.com. Moving in to today's episode. This is the third of a 4-part trending series.
Maybe 5 if you have your way.
Oh, that is right. It is we could push it 6, 7, 8. It's going well, so maybe we keep going.
Stop.
Today we're going to talk about trends or anything and everything in the lamb show ring industry. We're very fortunate to have Wade Franklin with us today. For those of you in the sheep industry, no introduction is needed. For the rest that may not be familiar with Wade, I consider Wade to be one of the brilliant minds in the livestock industry, not just in the sheep world of things, but his approach to breeding livestock, managing, feeding, all of the above is very intriguing, very well thought out. Everything is done with a purpose. His wife, Clayton, and son Hudson have had as strong of an impact in terms of a show family throughout the Texas majors and across the country as any family out there. And it's certainly an accomplishment that takes a great deal. Ryan, I've talked to you about people you meet in youth livestock activities that eventually evolved into valued connections or close friends. And I actually had the privilege.
You never mentioned me in that shit. Yeah,
I don't. I skipped that. I had the privilege of meeting Wade and his wife Clayton many years ago on a trip to the Royal Highland Stock Show as a part of the world judging competitions, the national FFA teams across several species, as well as the national 4-H teams, are invited to go compete at the Royal Highland Show. I was at that time helping coach the Illinois State 4-H livestock team that was a national champion 4-H livestock team, and we got together. I believe we met up in Edinburgh with all the other teams, and Wade, along with his wife Clayton, were on the team from New Mexico that actually won the national FFA livestock judging contest, and I believe Wade's younger brother Clay was on that team as well, actually, coached by Wade's father. So a very unique situation, and maybe the most impressive part of that, and Wade can maybe speak to this more strongly. They won that national FFA livestock contest with an 8th grader, being Clayton, who is now Wade's wife. I believe Clay would have been a year older, Wade maybe 2 years older, but a very young team to get to that level and move on through that competition. And 2 years later, they come back and win the national dairy FFA contest. And I do not know this for a fact, but I don't think there was a lot of dairy background per se there, but still able to accomplish that. So with that said, Wade and his wife, Clayton, along with Hudson, obviously very strong factors in the sheep industry and the stock show world. We really appreciate Wade coming on, and I can assure you, those in the sheep industry, along with just livestock enthusiasts, you're going to want to listen to what Wade has to say. It's going to be good. I'm excited about this one, Wade. Thank you for coming on.
Well, you should just keep talking. I
should.
Like what you have to say.
He's never been that nice about me in my life, Wade. Jesus Christ. I don't know what the hell you paid him, but let me know and I'll send him a check. Because, man.
I tell you what, I find, and I hope the younger people out there are listening, because you don't realize it. And Wade, when you were going over to Europe to compete at the Royal Highland Show and so forth, and there's several other people on that trip that you're still know very well or consider close friends, you hear people talk about this all the time, but this is one of the better examples that I can throw out there, that these things are important. Probably those people that you're meeting and the connections you're making overwhelm the actual technical knowledge or experience that you're undertaking at that time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's amazing the kind of caliber of people that was on that trip, and when you're on the trip, you don't realize it at the time, and then 20 years later, you look back and you think, man, there's kind of famous people that we actually got to meet and visit with and experience a little bit of life with, and so that was at least in my life and my wife's life as well, a very special point, and one that definitely made a difference in our approach to how we think about livestock and our life in general. So it was a good deal. And without that trip, me and you wouldn't be what we are today. And so that's a good point.
Absolutely. Ryan, do you want to take us into asking some questions on the sheep trend of things?
Sure. Again, Wade, and your family's been very successful, not only in the sheep and the goats, despite your influence and your relationship with Dale. You've overcome that. But I would just like to know, from your perspective as being a show dad and being in the trenches and being very successful, what do you think right now, if you could just give me 3 things, what are the big 3 things that get you to the top in the sheep show ring?
Yeah, we're going to start out with a heavy hitter, because that's a question that I think all families have asked or want to ask at different times, because this show thing is a good sport, and it's a good activity to raise your kid in. But as we all know, when you win, it's just better. And unfortunately, it's one of those deals where fewer winners and most just try to get there. And so, in saying that, it's difficult, it's hard, and I'd like to say that working hard and doing all the things time wise makes a big difference, and it does. But really, at the end of the day, you've got to have a couple of things work for your favor, and some would say that spending a tremendous amount of money is part of that. But I'm going to argue that more than spending money and those kind of things, you just got to get in with the right crowd, and that's something that we were really lucky to be able to do, is that we had the right people to hang out with and go to shows with, and then the same people helped us get our animals and take care of our animals and bounce ideas across. And so my advice to anyone that's trying to go from average to good or good to great is that find those people or find those folks that are continually in the winner's circle, and just try to get with them as best you can. I mean, really, there's no better way to learn how to do something or to get your kid the kind of experience they need, is that you've got to get with those folks that are in the winner's circle and try to get in their group. And then, like I said, you've got to spend enough time in the barn. You've got to work hard, and then and the money's part of it too, a little bit. But really, at the end of the day, there's a lot of ways to get to that circle that works. And our way was, we just got lucky to get with the right folks at a very young age.
Excellent. And that holds so true. And you hear these questions all the time. And I think we're going to continue to have people across species, not only in the lamb ring, but they're always reaching out. And we're in the middle of Southern sale season. And I can assure you, I'll have contact with no less than 100 different families that are wanting to show a goat before each sale. And I'm going to tell you 10% or more are going to ask a question very similar to that. And just going through the steps and giving those clients a protocol to get started with and make suggestions. Here's some other families in your area that maybe you can hook up with and travel with. Those things are critical, and it's absolutely essential to move forward.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up one quick thing, because like, people need to understand, and it is kind of a snowball effect. But if a family can just get started and have that first kind of big win, then the second one, the third one, the fourth one, not to say that it's ever easy, but it does become easier. And so if you can just fall in line and go to work, put your head down and get in with the right people and get that first win, then it becomes easier in the future, in my opinion.
I'll just share a personal story. And so again, because I think that point is kind of valid, and some people won't see it as valid or understand it as valid, but my very first state fair, I ended up having grand champion steer at State Fair, Texas. Probably shouldn't have, but I've shared that story in the podcast, but it happened. And I was 8 years old or whatever, and my parents were overwhelmed, and my mom was shocked, and very reputable man came up. Peyton Scott told Cherie, congratulations, all this stuff, and said, everybody's going to be real happy for that little boy this first time. He said, but he's going to win again and again and again. And just remember this, Cherie, they're not talking about you. You're not winning. But I think there is a lot of truth to what you say. Getting over that first big hurdle, whether it's getting you noticed or getting you in the limelight or getting people to pay attention to that showman or that show string or that operation, that is something that goes without saying that people miss in a lot of areas. And I'm glad that you brought that point out, because it is something that isn't talked about, and it is very, very important.
I agree 100%.
Wade, let's look backwards a little bit to try to maybe predict or lead us into the future. If you were to think back the past 5, maybe 10 years in the lamb market show ring, what changes have you noticed, or what changes have made the biggest difference? What the direction is now?
Well, I just think back. I mean, I don't know. I think sheep have kind of progressed, and I don't know. Maybe our sport doesn't move as fast as maybe like the hog guys do, and those kind of things. I mean, it kind of seems like we've been trying to make the same one here for a little bit, but it's maybe changing slightly. I mean, I think the biggest change that I've seen personally in the sheep thing, especially here in the last 5 years or so, is that we've made them older and we've made them smaller, and that's not all a bad thing. It's not a great thing. The good part about having a little bit older, smaller kind of sheep is that when with age, does come some positive stuff. I mean, they obviously have more bone and they have a little more fur. You can get a little more bulk in them. And then the nice thing is too, and especially considering that these things are costing more than they've ever cost, at least in my lifetime. I mean, these things are extremely high right now, at least the good ones. And that's okay too. But you'd like to be able to show them kind of multiple times. I mean, I think back 10 years ago, people had like a summer set, and they had a fall set, and then they had a winter set, maybe a spring set, depending on where you're from. And at this day and time, I mean, the difference between your summer set and your winter set or spring set is really not that much. I mean, those sheep are all pretty much born the same time. And so we're showing smaller, older sheep. And that's negative, because with that, we've got a little more mature lamb that's maybe not as neat and not as cute and not as fundamentally correct, but then you have a sheep that has some longevity, and you can show it in the summer, show it in the fall, show it in the winter, and that becomes nice when the thing costs $20,000. You hate to just, if in the old days, 10 years ago, you kind of get it ready, and then it would become too big or too old, and we'd have to get rid of it and show a different one. But I would say that's the biggest change in the last 5 years, that these things are just a little bit smaller statured. They're older, they're more mature, and we've done it to ourselves, because we've wanted to make them as bulky as possible, and then we've wanted to make them, as stout or have the appearance of stoutness at the ground, and that obviously comes with some age. And so, and in doing that, when you make them older, you have to make them slightly smaller so they stay in a competitive weight range. The worst thing you can have is that right now is that 5 or 6, 7 month old sheep that wants to really grow too fast and get to 155 pounds too quick. And then there's really nothing you can do management wise to slow that thing down and make him stop and put it in a competitive weight range, in the future. So, and like I say, I think those things will correct themselves as we go forward, but that's the difference between a lamb that was born in 2015 and a lamb born in 2022 is when we show it, he's probably 2 months older and than it was in 15. Because ideally, just like we show sheep primarily in Texas, and April's in 2013, 15, whatever, April's was the perfect age. And I'm thinking now that for San Antonio, Houston type lambs, that probably more like a February lamb is kind of ideal. And so that's a 2 month difference, which is pretty excessive. I mean, it's a big difference, 2 months. So,
Wade, you brought up you talked about management in that deal there, and talking about the age difference and how the trends are going. Just for some people don't understand that we have a wide array of listeners on this podcast, from the seasoned professionals to the very newbies that are just starting. Could you describe for me or explain to our listeners in terms of the trends, in terms of exercise, where we're at? Because there's a lot of different ways you can go. I mean, like I said, at some point, maybe it was last week or something, Dale talked about asking me about a bear Suffolk legged one that I won my first county fair with and stuff. And to be honest with you, we had a track dog that ran that one, but now there's treadmills and all these things and walkers. So just give our listeners some insight on where you think the trends are in terms of exercise programs.
Yeah, I think the exercise deal is really something that really hasn't changed a whole lot, at least in my lifetime. I mean, obviously, there's many ways to do it correctly, and not everyone has access to all the toys. But ideally, we run sheep with dogs, and we have treadmill. We walk sheep going backwards with the treadmill, and we use walkers to kind of get them out and get them a little endurance and get them some steps that they need every day. And really it's the same. We've kind of done the same, at least in our program. We've done the same exercise program pretty much the entire time. The only difference is maybe, because we're not feeding them as lean as we were maybe 10 years ago. And I think that's okay too, because I'm not sure that we need to be. I mean, all these sheep are, in my opinion, no sheep is too fat to eat. The difference is what you want to know from a judge's perspective is that sheep mostly red or mostly white? And if he's mostly red, which means he has muscle, then that's good. And if he's mostly white, he's fat, which in my opinion is bad. But so we're not exercising them maybe as much as we did 10 years ago, but we're still using the same toys and the same tools. And I think going forward, I can't imagine we're going to do a lot different. Those sheep need some endurance and they need some stamina. And the best way to increase some core strength is to either exercise them a little bit on a treadmill or use a track dog and chase them with a dog. Even just generally letting them out and letting them play and buck and do those kind of things is good as well. And I know Dale uses the sand hills, and those can work fine. Same kind of concept, just getting them to do something and getting them out of the pen is as positive as anything you can do. And I'm not sure there's a better or worse way to do it. As long as you're doing something, I think you're gaining ground. In an ideal situation, having a track dog and a treadmill and a horse walker or hot walker, whatever you want to call it, having all three of those is the most ideal, because certain sheep, just like athletes, require certain exercise programs. And if you have all three of those toys in your pocket, then you can use all of them. And one sheep might require more track time, or another sheep might require more treadmill, and they all require some hot walker time. And so having those in your pocket's a good thing.
Excellent. And I want to go back and I think that's so well stated. And we have a treadmill as well that we don't use a lot during the summer, but when it gets cold here and we can't get out to the track, then we bounce into the treadmill and so forth. So having all those tools and what you're comfortable with, what your family's experienced with and comfortable with, dead on where we need to be. I want to go back a little bit. Wade, you'd mentioned this, and Cade, when he was on, mentioned this, and I think we can apply it across species. But and we can go, I'm going to say the past 10 years, approximately. We have evolved into showing more mature animals, older animals. And as you mentioned, we have to make them genetically just a little bit more moderate in terms of their frame. So we don't let that weight get away from us with the extra age that we're showing them at. It always seems like when I go back way far, go back to the early 1990s, the animals that were winning right then, I thought, wow, these are really good. I don't know that we're going to progress or change a lot from where they're at. Even go back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, in the moment, we think, wow, they're really close. You made a comment that I don't know that the target has changed a lot on lambs in the recent 5+ years. We're still kind of throwing that dart, trying to make that really, really good one. Not necessarily a lot bigger framed, a lot smaller framed, lighter muscled, heavier muscled, whatever it is, but just balanced and complete. So I want to bring out that I agree that we're not seeing that dramatic change. But if you were to go back and look at a champion lamb from 10 years ago that you thought was pretty good, is it still one that you would look at today in the same light?
Absolutely not. No, I'm looking at a picture right now because I'm in our little trophy room. That's where we're having this. And he was one of the best sheep that ever showed. He won the Indiana State Fair in 2012. And Dan Willoughby's son showed him. And that sheep could not be in the top 5 at the best county fair you want to go to right now. So what I was trying to say is I think we're still trying to make the same sheep. It does look different in 2022 than it did look in 2012, but the same goals apply. I mean, we're still trying to make, an athletic, elite looking one that's got as much bulk and mass as you could put, and their feet still point the same direction. I mean, that was the goal in 2012, and it's the same goal in 2023. We have better animals to work with for the most part right now than we did, and so that's why they look different. But I still remember, when we started trying to put wool on their legs and try to add more muscle and a little more hamp feature and all those kind of things in 2003 or 4, which seems like 100 years ago, even though it was 20 years ago. But when you're doing it that long, it seems forever. But, that was the goal then. And I still think, as when we make breeding selections or breeding decisions this summer and this fall, I mean, the goal is still going to be the same. We're going to try to make them as good looking as we can, with as much bulk as we can and as much hamp feature as we can. And so from that perspective, I don't think we've changed our approach much in the last 20 years. But I will say, if you look at Champions on the Wall from 2010 to 2023, they're going to come across different. And mostly because we've just had the same emphasis, I think, in our breeding decisions and our approach that, when we should have made them better, but we've just made them better phenotypically now than they were. And so, yeah, I mean, like I say, I mean, they do look, I mean, a sheep that won in 2012 at a Texas major is not going to win or even come close right now. And that's a good thing. I mean, that means we've done our job to some degree. Now, obviously, we can't be, complacent and drink our own Kool-Aid and think we've made the perfect animal, because we haven't. We still, complain and gripe about ones that win and don't win and need to make them better. But they are better animals than they were, at least in my opinion.
I love that concept. And real quick, I want to reference something with that. When you talk about making them as bulky as we can, still sporty, still have those feet pointing the right direction, the fact that you've been breeding for that for 10 plus, 15 plus years, I think is exactly why they're continuing to get better, because you're on that similar path. If we look at the history of the swine show ring, we've taken them from midgets to giants to midgets and back and forth. And every time we make a big swing one direction or another, we do a little single trait selection, trying to get ahead of that curve. Anytime we select for one, maybe two traits, the other traits tend to go the wrong direction. But if we did have, and we kind of, and I see it a little bit in the sheep more than I do the pigs, and definitely more in the goats, because we're still very immature in the goat generational progress. And I think a little bit in the steers, similar to the sheep, that when we stay on one path, targeting that sporty, that bulky, that correct animal, we're able to select for more traits over time, and they can consequently get better. When we have to make that big type change and that big swing, wow, that's when we can make that change quick, but we bring problems along with it. And that's interesting to me. That the way you put that into context makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I just don't think our game. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, the Suffolk sheep were king because we thought they needed to be lean and athletic. And it was not a bad animal. It's just a different looking one. But we were ultra concerned with how fat they were. And then so you when you take fat away, then you try to, one of the ways you do that is to make them more expressive. And so we were looking for that lean, athletic touch. And for some reason at that time, it didn't seem like bone or width or structure seemed to make much difference. I mean, I think it was more of a, let's brace them, make them drive hard, and then turn them sideways, and the one that's taller and longer that's still ripped up wins. And so then I think we progressed from that when we decided that these sheep need to, actually travel correct and be straight in their top lines and have some levelness to their hip and elevation in their front end. And the only thing that we did from the change to the Suffolk is that after we tried to make them better looking, in the early 2000s, and then from there we've just tried to take that, basically that same look, and then just try to add more bulk. And so in theory, I mean, you should get a tall shouldered, good looking one that's big backed and big butted and his feet point the right way. And it's easier said than done because I've only seen just a very few that accomplish all those traits. I mean, I guess one of my pet peeves is when people talk about a sheep that's got some wow factor and it's hard to create because he's got some kind of crazy trait, you know, whether his sternum's in his throat or he's got ginormous legs or some abnormal shaped hip, and we think that's unique because he's got some kind of unique trait. But I think the real breeders and the ones that are real hard to make are the ones that accomplish many goals, and the ones that check almost all the boxes. That's the one that's unique for me, because that, from a breeder standpoint, that's the hardest one to make, is the one that checks all those boxes. And there's very few that have checked all the boxes that I've seen. So, but yeah, I mean, I think our goal for the last 20 years has been the same.
So wait, I'm going to let you off the hot seat for just a second, because Dale and I had a discussion earlier in the week, and not about this podcast, but since we're talking about sheep and trends or whatever, I'm going to focus the hot seat over to him just a little bit. And so Dale gets really, really critical on my fine swine. And everybody knows, I've stated 1,000 times that if I just had to pick a species to sort, I love sorting hogs more than anything else, and for multiple reasons. But he talks about the structure issues and the challenges that they face in swine. And I guess when we had this conversation earlier, I think now more than ever, and I'm not trying to be derogatory on any species, I think all of the species in the livestock show industry are at the highest level and the highest caliber that they've ever been. But I will also say, I think that structure is emphasized less and prioritized less in show sheep than any of the other. And Dale, we had that conversation earlier in the week, and so I want you to man up and own up to the fact that you agreed with me and explain to me why you think we are at that point there.
I think that and I'm going to say it in goats. I see it in sheep. I see it in hog. I see it across the board from a skeletal standpoint issues. Because when I step further away from something, then come back to it, such as the swine arena, I think it's atrocious. And I've made it very clear on this podcast many times that the bar, when you're in the trenches, when you're looking at animals that are having issues moving, it becomes more the norm. And that's fine. And it's the real world. It is what it is. If I relate this to cattle, I in the last 2 weeks doesn't apply to this because I didn't have this issue, but all those cattle that come in and pop on those rear pasterns, I think, Ryan, you talked about it as a pet peeve very recently. But if we go into the goat side, I mean, it's a train wreck. We're selecting
for sheep trends, Dale.
For so many other things, it's a train wreck in the goat. As we come into the sheep, there's one thing that they've been able to get away with in the lamb arena, in my opinion. And I want Wade to jump in on this. As we put more shag on those legs, and we emphasize a lot of different things, and because soundness and where that bar is on skeletal correctness in movement and how those angles need to be to the joints, especially that rear hock and maybe rear pastern on a lamb, not all judges see it. Not all judges agree, even if they do see it. And it's kind of scattered a little bit. And you're going to listen to one judge that's very critical on it. And you look at that lamb and it doesn't make any sense what they're talking about, that this one's sound or that one isn't. It just, they're clearly different opinions, including mine on where that falls, evaluating and where the bar should be. So what I'm getting at, we can get those lambs propped up. We can fit that leg wool to a point where who's ever doing the fitting has the angles correctly. But when we ask them to go into motion, we sometimes find a train wreck, whether they push the top up, whether that hind leg is all over the place. Lots of messes. Wade, can you weigh in on where we're at, relatively speaking, and the lamb ring on those hind legs?
Yeah, I definitely have an opinion. For one, you use my pet peeve word. I hate the word shag. First of all, it's not shag. Okay. It's not shag. It's wool. You can call it fur.
It's leg wool.
But shag is an annoying term. And it's one of those, and I don't like that word.
I don't blame you on that at all, Wade. I don't
hate
use it
that
in the
word.
sheep
Okay.
ring.
Well, here's the thing. Okay. Yes. And it's the same thing in the swine barn, and it's the same thing in the cattle barn too. People, and I'm talking about people that know, can look at a hind leg setup or hind leg posture of any animal, and you would think it would be a cut and dried area. Like, that's a good hind leg and that's a bad hind leg. But there is a lot of gray, because people that do know will tell you that's a good hind leg, and there's other people that will tell you on that same animal that that's a terrible hind leg. The one thing about, and this is my opinion, look, I want sheep structure, and I base it on attractiveness. I like an attractive, structured sheep. Okay. And the reason that I'm going to go vote on the attractive part even over the functional part is because of this. In our world, okay, we don't have sheep that are jammed up in confinement on concrete like the hog guys do. It's just not the same. We don't have animals that weigh over 1,500 pounds, okay? And so consequently, there's just not as much pressure from weight, volume, whatever you want to call it, put on a sheep skeleton to overwhelm them and give them some kind of disability where they cannot function. I mean, and I don't want to pick on them. I'm going to pick on them slightly, but you take some of these tall frame kind of Suffolk sheep or whatever frame you or breed you like, and those sheep skeletally are not right. Their angles are straight. Everything's too steep. It's a bad approach from a skeletal standpoint, but yet those animals function. They get big. I mean, those big Suffolk bucks get 400 pounds and they live till they're 6 or 7 or 8 years with no issue. And so from a function standpoint, we just don't have to be as critical because of angles and all those kind of things as maybe things in other species. At the same time, wrong is wrong. And I don't know, maybe sheep people, I don't know, people from other species think that sheep people don't concern themselves with skeleton, which I don't know. I think they do, but maybe that's just my bias. But I think a sheep guy's perspective on skeletal quality, at least in my opinion, relies upon attractiveness in terms of being able to keep its top straight, its hind leg on the corners, enough flex to get around the ring and move like it's supposed to, but maybe up on its toes slightly and maybe slightly steeper to where it has that attractive, drop the line look to the ground. I just don't think, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be overly concerned with structure. I just don't know that we got to be super crazy about it because of the environmental conditions that 99% of the sheep live in. I mean, I just don't think people get rid of ewes and rams when they're 2 and 3 years old because they have some kind of major skeletal default. I just don't see it. I mean, longevity wise in sheep, they just don't break down like other animals tend to break down. And everyone's seen it, when hogs live in confinement and you got those big old bulls and big old cows. And if they're not skeletally right, they just don't live very long. You just don't see that in my world.
That's interesting. And I agree with that. I guess I take a perspective on the skeletal. You can call it function, attractiveness, sportiness, whatever you want, but how that skeleton actually flexes from the knee to the pastern up front and how that shoulder's constructed. And then we get around behind and that hip and the hock and the rear pastern. If there's flexibility there, still keep it attractive, not down on their pasterns or too much set to the hock. But if we've got a bit of flexibility in that lower skeleton, it allows that lamb to go out and just glide where that top line doesn't move. The head and neck carriage is up there, and it's almost like an effortless movement. And I talk about this across species. If I'm standing out there in the ring sorting that show of any species, and that one comes in that is truly flexing on their feet and legs, and that body, that top line is staying in that similar position. Everything's right. The head carriage is right. The hip stays up. Everything's in place. That makes it so much easier for me to sort those animals, because these showmen, particularly in the lamb ring, are so good at getting those propped up, and we can fit those legs to really look right in terms of their angles. I guess to me, that correctness, that attractiveness in motion makes a huge difference.
Yeah, every sheep show is won with 10 first steps in the gate. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. I mean, obviously the propping them up and getting them drove and all those things matter, but I mean, I hadn't been to a big sheep show or important sheep show as long as I can remember where that winner came in and had the right kind of movement coming in the gate. And it's basically based on attractiveness. I mean, most of the times, I mean, these sheep can probably be slightly straight in their shoulder, and they're probably up on their toes a little bit, which gives them that little extra straightness to their pasturing. But and then no, bad hocks are bad hocks, and they don't win or can't win anyway. But I think we show sheep probably a little bit on the steep side, just to try to make them have that elite, attractive look. And so, but still, they've got to come in and flow and have some length of stride, and their top line's got to stay level and hold their shoulder up, and their chest floor's got to look right, or they really have no chance, even if you get them propped up correctly.
No, I would agree completely with that, and I apologize. I'm jumping in with a lot of questions, and I've got several more. I want to throw one more out there while we're talking about getting them propped up. Ryan and I have talked about this, and Ryan, please chime in. We have some of these sheep showmen in Wade. I have no idea where you're at on this, but I've come out a little strong sometimes when we got a sheep showman that their entire body is stretched out, doing the splits, whatever it may be, in the most unawkward position ever to get that sheep shown. Maybe it takes that. If it takes that to get that one propped up, I'm okay with that, but it's almost to the level that's a little distracting. Where are you at on this?
You're asking me or Ryan?
You. Ryan's going to tune in either way on this.
Oh, I'm going to chime in. I promise you, I'm going to chime in on this.
I'm not for it. I actually hate it.
Well, don't hold back, okay? Don't hold back.
Well, it's become popular, and there's
stupid.
Why would that be? How could that be popular?
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's stupid.
It is. I don't know where it came from. I think there's the idea that if the lower the showman, the more up, and some of it is a function of this. We have made these things too small, okay? And
I don't think
some of this, when you make them too small, you're trying to create that illusion that if the showman's down, then the sheep's more up. And I will tell you this though, those sheep are not there. I call it a pose move. Those sheep are not driving. They're
not 1 ounce at all.
They're just standing there, and you're kind of squatting down. And now, no one has ever seen my son do that, which means he was told, and he I don't think he could get in that position now. But I don't like it because, for one, it's distracting. For two, you're not driving on them at all. There is no brace. And for three, it just looks weird. So, I just think, I don't know. It's kind of one of them deals where it kind of got rolling, and then, people are copycat kind of things. And so somebody saw it, and then the next thing you know, somebody else is doing it. And then somebody in Wyoming sees somebody from Ohio doing it. So they're doing it in Wyoming. And then somebody in Wyoming or from Montana sees it in Wyoming, and now they're doing it in Montana. And it's kind of one of them things that have spread. But real sheep people, I don't think real. I'd like for somebody to come grab, like a 200-pound yearling stud buck and grab that thing and see if you can get in that position and he don't break your leg, and so it's one of those things that, and I think it happens in all species, but it's one of the things in the sheep world that kind of got started, and unfortunately it spread like wildfire.
I'm gonna chime in here, and y'all are gonna have to forgive me for a minute because I've got something to say here. First off, I agree with you completely, Wade. My issue on this is if you have to be in a gymnastic split to get that one to drive, and you actually have that lamb driving and bracing and tense, I'm all for it. Do what you got to do to get it.
Right.
99% of the time, those that are in that wide-legged stance down on the ground, those sheep are not driving at all. There's not 1 ounce of tension when you go to handle them. There's nothing. So they just look like they're doing a whole lot, and nothing has actually happened. I preach this in sheep showmanship all the time. Just because you look like you're doing something does not mean you are actually accomplishing what you need to do. I will tell you, I talk to every exhibitor in every showmanship contest that I judge. Whether they stay in the ring, win, go out the gate, doesn't matter. 50% of the constructive criticism that I have for every sheep or goat exhibitor is you're not getting an effective brace. So that says something right there, because if you just look from the outside of the ring, it looks like we're doing more than we ever have done, because we are in the splits on a balance beam or doing all this other stuff, but it's not working. And I appreciate your thoughts on it. I agree with you. And I am not trying to be a Texas bandwagon native or promoting my own state. I judge all over the nation, probably as much or more than anybody right now. That whole split-legged, wide, get underneath them deal, that is not as prevalent in Texas as it is in all the other places. And that's just a fact. And that's something I'm proud of. I'm just going to say
it's a fact.
I'm just going to say it. It's not as prevalent.
That doesn't. Yeah, it just hasn't. Well, I don't know. There's just really no logic.
There is absolutely
there's no logic behind it, other than it's a copycat deal. And look, if you want to show that way, that's fine. I mean, it's just like
if you can show that way and get it done, I'm okay with it. I don't care what your style is. But 90% of the kids that do that are not getting it done.
See, that's our approach to all showmanship when we don't do showmanship a lot. But that's I tell my son, or I tell families that we help, look, you show the same no matter what. This is how we show. And if the showmanship judge doesn't like our style, then that's okay. We'll get beat. And so we show the same every way, and I just don't think that getting down is a real effective way. Now, I will tell you that standing over the top of one and being a string bean is bad too. But I mean, you've got to, I call it getting an athletic stance. You've got to get in that linebacker stance or a volleyball, stance. And show sheep.
You have got to be in a position to where that lamb can come into you, and you can push back to get that tension. I mean, that is it. But when you're trying to do the splits on the balance beam, it's not going to work. That's just all there is. I'm sorry. I judge them too much. I feel too many sheep and goats. It just does not work.
I'm going to take the splits completely out of this scenario, because this was a question I wanted to throw away.
You started this.
I know. I'm taking it. I'm going down the same path. Just a little variance here. So let's take the kid doing the splits out of it. Let's say they're in a good sporty position to defend the push from that lamb, or we're in a good body posture for showing a sheep, that what you would consider a more normal position. And I see this with people in that position as well. Wade, help me. I'm senile, like our Sleepy Joe president.
Yes, you are.
I don't know. But for as many years as my nephew showed sheep, as I've judged sheep for decades, I hate to admit, where in this whole process did it happen? Because I can't tell you when, but we went where you go in the ring and I'd handle a sheep, and 90% of those kids were getting a pretty good brace on that lamb. They just were. people were telling them how to do it. They understand that if you flex your muscle, it's going to handle a little bit better. All of those things. When did it quit? And nothing to do with doing the splits, even though that contributes.
It has absolutely everything to do.
But
with the splits.
Even kids that don't do the splits, they won't give me what I call a hard. They won't take advantage when I come up to handle to get a brace that will pop that muscle or flex the muscle. If you're talking about on a human, I don't know. Wait, tell me. Somebody's telling them not to brace their sheep when you handle. Where is this coming from?
I think it kind of goes back to where, we de-emphasize, lean athletic muscle to some degree. And I think sometimes it's just a matter of that some of those kids, the best way to maybe get their front end where they think it needs to be and their hip shape level and to stand square on their legs, maybe, because it is hard. I mean, if you can make a good animal look bad by trying to overcook it or overbrace it. Okay.
Agreed.
And so I think sometimes people have been real cautious because I don't know, maybe they just don't train them correctly. Because we're talking about it, but all the really good ones, I say 75% of the really good ones show these things correctly. But the problem is that some of the ones that are just trying to get there maybe don't. And I think one of the ways to make that sheep have a little more aesthetic look or just a little more balanced look is to not overcook it or overdrive it. And I think that's why you're seeing. And then the second part is what we've been talking about. It those kids that get in that squatted low position, they really cannot put too much brace on one. And they don't, and look, these things don't have to be like, you don't have to hammer down on one and make them go maybe like you did in 1995, but there's nothing better than when you walk up and hit a sheep behind his shoulder and you put your hand on its back and it kind of pushes back against you. And there's really only one way to do that. And that's to put a little knee in him and make him squat and drive just a little bit.
And see what you said right there. I think that's perfect because that is the thing. And if we're being honest, the sheep that are going to be competitive at the top end of all of these classes, whether it's a county fair, a jackpot show, or a national show, state fair, we could just let them stand there and they're probably going to be hard enough without a brace for most of the judges. But what you said right there is nothing better that when you go to grab a hold of one and that thing comes back on you. That's what I'm talking about right there. That's what separates the great ones from the good ones. And just like you said, that requires the showman knowing how to get that reaction out of that animal at that given moment when that person comes up there. And I talked to Dale earlier, Wade, before we got on here about a future topic and just little tricks of the trade or whatever. But like I truly believe most of the top end sheep that I handle, they could be standing there tied to the rail on a halter. They're probably going to be hard enough without any assistance. But when I go to handle one and there's two sheep that are basically on the same level, equal quality, and that one kid can make that one drive the way that I want it to, and the other one is just standing there not doing anything, who's going to win? Right. And that's a part of it that most people do not understand, that it happens at every level from the county fair all the way up. And I think it is more prevalent in sheep and goat showmen just because of what we're saying than anything else. And it's not that the kid that's not getting a brace doesn't have a good one or isn't trying, but they're not being effective and the other one is.
Well, one thing about sheep and goats both, and I'm not saying that you have to be athletic, but there is an athletic component.
Absolutely.
From a kid's standpoint, from the kid standpoint to showing a sheep and goat correctly, because
way more than any of the other species.
Yeah,
and I bring that up in showmanship all the time. There is more athleticism, more things involved there than any other species, and it is harder. It is more difficult than the other species because of what you said right there.
Well, I just know that kids that have a little bit of an athletic background, and not in every case, but in most cases, a kid that has a little bit of an athletic background, teaching them how to show a sheep or a goat correctly is much easier than a kid that can't throw a baseball. And if a kid doesn't have that, just a little bit of athleticism or athletic background, it can be challenging for them to drive a sheep correctly.
So we're getting into the length of this, and the one thing about all these trend deals, even the one that was just me and Dale, because we had a guest cancel, I like the fact that they're going a little longer because we have more to talk about. And I left you off the hot seat a little bit earlier, but I'm going to put you on the hot seat now. If you listen to the podcast, I don't know if you do, but I have problems with terms that don't mean anything or terms that are the wrong thing and all this other stuff. And so term that we use or I do not, but lots of sheep judges use in terms of this one's shallow. Okay. I am just going to read for everybody out there the Webster's Dictionary definition of shallow: of little depth, not deep, superficial. Shallow is not a positive term in its origin. And yet that is something that most people, and I understand what they're talking about. I get it. I know the body type that is the trend, all this other stuff. But this bothers me, Wade. I'm not going to lie. It bothers me immensely that we use that term and we talk about those things and we promote that as a positive when it's not even a positive term. But anyway, that's just my thoughts, and you and Dale can but Dale knew I was going to go there on this. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't.
Dale, you got a comment on shallow?
I'm going to bring, yes, I do. So
get Chase on here. Bring Chase in here.
I'm going to refer to Chase, my
bring Chase
son.
In here.
And Wade knows him well. So I took him to Alabama with me, and we went there to judge a cattle show, and they decided to have a sheep and goat show the following day because I was coming down and would agree to do it. And this is the first time I think I've had Chase out in the ring with me at a sheep show. And the sheep start coming in. And I don't know if we're in the first class or second class, but Chase leans into me and says, "Dad, I don't know what this is with their body type, but they all look like tube socks." And he's referring to why are they so shallow? And I'm going to address this, and Wade, please help me out here. And I want one. I want one pushed up in that chest floor. And I think that's where a lot of it stems. We'd all love to have that chest floor up. They're just a little higher than maybe where the flank sets, and it's totally abnormal to Mother Nature, and it's backwards from what the natural process is. But it's a look that we kind of like in the show ring. And when we get those deeper bodied animals, whether it be a lamb, a goat, a pig, a calf, whatever it is, the deeper bodied ones tend to be a little more flat sided, where if we can deform that rib shape by pushing that up and making it what we call shallower chested or more pushed up in their chest, the body shape automatically lends itself to a rounder rib, which we all like and talk about, even though it serves no real functional purpose from a real world standpoint. But when you get your hands on that lamb or that goat, or even the look when you get on top of a pig, those round ribbed or round bodied ones are very appealing from a show ring aesthetic. So I think shallow comes into play. I hope they're referring to that chest floor needing to be pushed up there, which consequently makes them rounder ribbed. But I don't know.
And before Wade gives his rebuttal, I don't want people to think that I'm like insane. I get the body type that we're going.
You are crazy.
Okay, I am insane. I get the body type that we're going for. I get that we want them round ribbed and all this other stuff. I understand that we want them elevated in their chest floor and all this stuff. That still does not answer my question on why we use shallow in terms of body type and conformation as a positive in the sheep ring when it's a negative term. That was my point.
I don't know. I guess shallow chested. It does not affect me like it does you. I want all of the lambs, almost all the lambs I look at, to drop down more in their flank. And it just, that's not an easy thing to do sometimes, or it doesn't work relative to Mother Nature. Not saying that we can't manufacture some of these things and get them there, but yes, that's Wade. Do you have anything you can help out here? He's not.
Yeah, I can. I mean, in my opinion, a good animal is one that if you draw a circle around its front end and weigh that circle, and then you draw a circle around its back end and weigh that circle, and if the back end is heavier than the front end, that's a good animal. And I think that fits the sheep deal extremely well. I want their back end to be bigger than their front end, which means you take that shoulder blade and drive it in, and you take that sternum and drive it up. And so the part that sheep people talk about shallow, and we probably use the term too much, but I mean, basically, if you could take his sternum and the top of its shoulder blade and make it as short as possible, which I do not like the word long blade, because you're really not changing the length of its blade. All you're doing is you're changing the angle of its blade and where its sternum sits in its body. And so if you could take its sternum and shove it higher into its cage, and then at the same time create that perfect angle to its shoulder blade to where the top of its chine bone or the top of its blade sits down in his body, that's what we're trying to do. And when you do that, and then you drop its flank and then drop its stifle, you have that really nice line from the side, and where you have a chest roar that sticks up and a flank line that sticks down, and then a lower stifle that sticks below that. And that's called a winner. But yeah, shallow can, I mean, there's some people that don't like that word. I actually use it occasionally just to describe one that's, got the sternum where it needs to be, and the chest where we want it. And really there is no production or any kind of thing that makes that more positive, other than the show world thinks that that's real neat. And I'm okay with it. There's some things I'm not okay with, but I'm okay with that, because if you take his sternum and shove it as high as you can and drop his flank line and then stick his stifle down further than his flank, and you take that picture, that is the kind of silhouette that I actually am looking for. And it makes no sense in the commercial world, and I'm okay with it.
Oh, I don't believe there's any value in the commercial world in the show ring, and Dale and I argue about that all the time. Again, and I get what you're saying, and I just have always found that very interesting, that term is readily used in almost every show there is, and I find interest in it because it's primarily a negative term, and I don't think it's used properly as much
it's not. And really,
as it should be.
We need to be talking about where their breastbone sits and where their sternum sits.
See, that's what I'm talking about. I don't think when it's used properly as a positive. And so,
well, it's just like the people and they use it in the pig deal. And I'll give you another term.
And again, like I said, these trend deals have run long, and that's fine with it. But the last thing that I have, and Dale's just going to have to get over it being the last thing because he's the one that brought this up. It is a trend. And again, I have said on this podcast, I'll say again, that I don't care if you hold your sheep by two hands leading around. I don't care if you've got them on a halter or whatever will allow that sheep to stride out in its most natural ability and comfort level, all that. That's where I need to go. Do see in not so much in Texas, but in other states, a lot in other states, that there are more sheep on halters, whether it's market or breeding. And that is something that's kind of becoming more prevalent. And so just on that trend right there, and since Dale was the one that started this in the goat deal, nice way to end. What are your gentlemen's thoughts on that?
All you, Wade. All you.
Okay.
Of course, Dale would
I
bow
would-
out since he's the damn one that started the shit. But anyway, that's
that was
fine.
in the goat ring, not the sheep ring.
Well, it's the same. It's not maybe
Thank
not
you, Wade.
exactly,
It's basically the
but
same.
it's
Yeah.
the same. But
No,
it-
I was
it-
replacing a chain rather than if we could show a goat by hand, and some can.
Hey,
I'm okay with it.
that happens too.
I oppose. I think a good showman with a well broke goat with a chain works great, but the vast majority of those goats have not been trained or choose to not cooperate very well on the chain or in halter sometimes. But it's far more abusive to watch in the ring when a kid is choking out that goat trying to drag it across the ring by a chain around its neck. That was my concern. But wait, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't. Yeah, in the sheep deal, we would never use a chain. But I don't think it matters. There's nothing better though. Here's what I'll say: there's nothing better than a high-headed sheep coming in the gate with no halter, no nothing, and the kid's got 2 fingers on that thing's chin, and he cruises and does everything that he's supposed to do. And ideally, that's how you would do it. You would walk a sheep with 1 hand and with 2 fingers, and he would come and have that proud, cocky coming in the gate. But some of them it's just not their style. And if it looks better with a halter, then that's a better way to do it. And I personally don't care if you have a 9-year-old or a 15-year-old. If your sheep walks better with a halter, I would walk it with a halter. But in saying that, if you can train, teach, coach, whatever you want to call it, that thing to walk in on its own with no apparatus and no distraction, then that's the better way.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, Wade. Like, I think that is the correct deal. Like, if you can do it with even just cupping that thing under his chin as he walks around, he just glides out, or the U glides out. That's the way to do. But like I said, I think that you hit the point perfectly, that you've got to do what's best for that animal. And I judged Missouri State Fair showmanship last summer, and it was very, very competitive. And in the intermediate division, I used a young lady that showed her sheep on a halter, and I said, this is going to be controversial, and y'all can, torch me when I head to the parking lot. But the best showman out here has got a halter on her sheep, and she's going to win because she did the absolute best job. And so I think that what you say is whatever it takes for that individual animal, and we all know that all sheep, all goats, all whatever are different, to let them present themselves in their best light, that's what you need to do. And I think that is why you are seeing this trend of more sheep on halters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you can't walk that thing, because it's funny how I've seen good-legged animals be bad-legged animals just because you walked them with your hands. And then at the same time, I've seen those same, you put them on a halter and lead them, and they walk straight and true and hold their top line right. If that's what it takes to give your best chance of winning, then that's what I would do. I mean, and if a judge, in my opinion, if a judge holds that against you, then they've never had a kid that they, either their own kid or somebody they've helped, show an animal. Most of the times, if people that have helped kids show animals correctly, they would just take that with a grain of salt. And well, that, I guess that thing, unless it's, like a little kid that's 9 years old and they need all the help they can get, but it really doesn't matter. You can have a boy that's 6 foot tall, and if that sheep looks better with a halter, then show it with a halter. There's no problem, in my opinion, with that. Other than it can be, the only thing with a halter is it can be just slightly in the way or whatever when they go to brace it and set it up. And ideally no halter, but there again, if it looks better, go with it, in my opinion.
No, and I think that, Wade, and I've known you for a long time, and we share a philosophy that is is very true and really could care less what's going on around the world, that everything we're going to do is for a purpose, and it has to be for a purpose. There's no reason for your copycat splits if it serves no purpose, or to drench with this or to feed with this or whatever. It all has to make sense. And I think this is a perfect example of such. And I wanted to come back real quickly, and then we're going to wrap up into question and answer. You made the comment about drawing a circle around the front end and a circle around the back end. And this is a trending episode. What direction are we going? In the goat arena, we sometimes slide a little bit off track on some single trait selections, and we're seeing that front end as big or bigger sometimes than the rear circle. I personally don't see it that skewed in the lamb ring. And do you, for any reason, see that shoulder opening up that much more to where that front end outweighs the rear end in the lamb ring? Can that?
Yeah, we see it. I mean, and it goes back to what I was talking about. When we make these things older and we're showing them, 2 or 3 months older than we did a few years ago, they're going to be more mature up front. And when they get mature up front, they're going to have a little thicker necks, and they're going to have a little more shoulder blade, and it's going to sit out there a little bit further than maybe we think's ideal. And that's where I kind of hope that as we go forward, hopefully some of these judges, and I respect judges more than, it's a hard job to sit out there and sort everybody, because everybody comes to a show trying to win. So I actually have a lot of respect. But what I would want, if they ask me, is to use consideration and say that sheep is better because he is younger and more youthful, especially up front, which means his shoulder blade and his neck and just the maturity that he has or doesn't have to the front third of his body is good. And so I think we see it, and I think going forward, it's going to be emphasized, or selection is going to be, emphasized more because those sheep are younger, they're more youthful up front, and they've got the right kind of neck and shoulder in them. And in most cases, even though they need to have some width and some squareness up front, they don't need that extra bulk and maturity that some of these things do have. At least that's my take. Hopefully we see that going forward.
I like that concept a lot, and we've gone down the path across species with the maturity that we've already discussed in detail. And when the maturity comes, that shoulder and so forth is coming along with it. And I know where Ryan's at with
ugly headed
shoulder. Yes, all of those things. So I think that's logical, Wade. If we try to just sit down and say, okay, we're still trying to make these animals bulky and sporty and still have that look and movement, all those things are kind of going the same direction, but we've done some of the bulkiness through the maturity. And now that we've kind of got there, those elite ones are going to become, in my opinion, that's a logical direction, a little more youthful up through that front end and not showing maybe as much age, and still have that weight in terms of just that big top and a stout hip. And that's a very logical direction to go. Not changing from the forerib back necessarily, but neatening up that front end a little bit.
Yeah, because that head, neck, and shoulder, breastbone, that doesn't lie. And I think most everyone that's very familiar with any kind of livestock can look at one's front end and go, that's a young animal and versus an old animal. And I think there needs to be a medium. I'm not a proponent of like these things need to be, 6 months old and weigh 150 pounds. That's I know that's unrealistic as well, but they're really, these things that are 13, 14, 15 months of age and showing that extra sign of maturity to the front end that they do show, these guys got to start beating some of those things so that, we have to be a little more realistic in our breeding dates and those kind of things. And we start showing livestock that are more realistic in terms of age, at least in my opinion. So
I love it.
And that front end deal does, you can tell that guy can tell you that thing's young and immature, but his head, neck, and shoulder, they'll tell the truth every time if you'll just look. Agreed
completely. Well, Wade, I'm going to invite you to stick around for the question and answer, because knowing it was a sheep or lamb trends. I pulled at least 2.
You actually
questions,
took
maybe
time
3.
to find the question?
I sorted through them a little bit to lend itself towards the episode.
Look at you. Well, before you get to make your question and answer happen, I have to thank Basic Animal Health for being the question and answer sponsor for the Beyond the Ring podcast. And the Basic Animal Health is dedicated to providing natural solutions to all of your animals' needs. They have several products. This week, we're going to focus on the Trailer Ride, which helps your livestock get to and from the show healthy. Formulated with our proven gut health as the base, it contains ingredients that not only helps calm your animal, but also provides superior immunity, respiratory, and hydration support. Trailer Ride even encourages your animals to drink on the ride too. At Basic Animal Health, they are constantly innovating and developing products that contain natural solutions for your animals. Over the coming months, they will be releasing lots of new products, and you'll be able to get a discount with the code BTRJLA, and every dime that you spend, we will get a kickback on that thanks to their sponsorship of the Question and Answer podcast. So we greatly appreciate Basic Animal Health for their support of the BTRJLA.
First question comes from Krista. With Trends of Sheep podcast coming up, do you think judges should start feeling, Wade, you're not going to like this term, feeling the shaggy-legged sheep for bone size?
I'll just jump in here. You're not going to see it happen, and it's not going to matter, but I will tell you that I think that well over the majority of them, that it wouldn't matter if they felt it or not. They wouldn't be able to tell through it. If you are competent and have seen enough sheep without the leg wool pulled up and fluffed up or glued or whatever, you can tell the natural foundation and stoutness of an animal by way more than how much leg wool is on that animal. It starts at the base. It starts with a lot of things. It all comes into proportion. But no, you're not going to see people feel the legs for that, because then that would show that they are insecure in their judging abilities. I judged a big sheep show just the other weekend. And again, I may have said 3 comments about stoutness of feature or leg wool or anything like that, because regardless of the amount, there wasn't enough contrast. I said more about frailty than one's being big-legged, and I don't use the word shag or, stout featured and all this other stuff, but you're not going to see it in terms of feeling, and I really don't think it would make a difference anyway. It would just be for show. Go ahead, Wade.
No. That's the answer.
It's very simple. Yes, I'm right there.
No, and here's the thing too. Look, we went through the deal trying to make all these things bigger bone than they needed to be. And from when you try to raise them things, and if the goal is just to try to make them super extra heavy boned, and I'm for that stout kind of look, in which the wool in their legs helps that. But when you make their bones too big, and then you try to lamb those things, it does work. And so let's don't try to. I mean, this bone and even the fur and the so-called shag that she said, that's fine. But it really does what Ryan's. It needs to be a check the box and let's move on. Let's don't talk. I mean, they've got to have it to win, but then once they've got plenty, move on to something else, and we can, because there's other selection criteria that's out there that's more important than that. But the answer is absolutely not.
And I agree wholeheartedly with that. And especially when you come in and let's make these animals bigger boned. And we talk about it, or judges talk about it a lot. And I'm there. And I think the happy medium, maybe here, Wade, and you talk about lambing those out, or if we're in goats, kidding them out, or cattle, calving them out, whatever you want to talk about. When we put leg hair on a steer or a goat, or leg wool on a sheep, all of a sudden almost all of the judges are going to talk about that being bone to a certain degree, right, wrong, indifferent, all those things. When in all actuality, there's not a huge difference. And Kate had talked about this in the swine trending section in terms of circumference of bone. I do remember a research trial from decades ago that they measured the circumference of cattle bone, and it had a lot more to do with hide color and hair than it ever did bone. The ones we're calling heavier bone versus frailer bone. So to answer a question, it's easy, no. And we do have to be careful about just trying to go further and further with true circumference of bone. Let's get them adequate and put some hair on there, put some wool on there to get to that level where everything is proportional and looks dynamic. But is 3 or 4 inches of leg wall on a sheep enough? Probably. Do we need 7 or 8 inches? Probably not. More isn't necessarily better. And I went on a tirade about muscle in lambs and goats where we get to a certain point. Let's call it enough where we don't call it a huge advantage to have just a little bit more. Let's look at the bigger picture, look at the skeleton, look at the balance, look at all those things. So nice question, Krista, but no, that is not going to happen. The next one's a very basic question. Ryan and Dale and Wade, you might be the best to jump in on this. What is your preferred method for parasite control? Do you see any benefits of alternating dewormers to avoid resistance? I guess we can go across species on that. Ryan, you want to jump in? Wade, you want to jump in?
I just think, again, and there's lots of different thoughts and theories on this. I just think that more people should worm on a regular basis is my suggestion to the world, judging more shows than anybody else. I think that should be something that is implemented in all species across the board more regularly. How about that?
That's good.
Yeah, and I think do it often and change it up. Of course, we live in a place in West Texas where we don't have as many parasites as some, but at the same time, I mean, worming should be on the calendar. And
thank you. Yes,
worm on the calendar and change it up. That's our protocol. And I don't really care which one you pick or which one you do first or which one you do last, as long as you just do a variety and worm on the calendar. And at our place, we're trying to worm things about every 3 weeks. And in other places, it could be more than that. If you live, in a place that worms are more prevalent and you got to worm them things bi-weekly or whatever, then so do it. Just do it by the calendar.
Excellent. And Paulette, I think there's no question we're developing resistance. So using a variety of wormers, not knowing which parasites are more resistant to each specific wormer, is going to give you better coverage. I think that's fairly simple. I also encourage, and I'm not sure why this doesn't happen more, send that fecal sample to a vet. We actually run our own fecals here. It's very simple. We have our clients send them in.
You're in like the 1% of the world.
But I don't. But it costs
Ryan. That's just Ryan. That's not 1%. That's not 0.0001%.
I don't.
Wade, I like you even better than I liked you before. Thank you, sir.
A $60 microscope,
that's because you're a control freak and a weirdo.
So we could prevent resistance if we knew what the hell was in there and what to worm for. Is what I'm getting at, and it's not hard to look at it and decide what it is. The next one's going to take a while, and we're going to break records here. I just know this next one, and in advance, Wade, not Ryan, Wade, I'm not going to put you in a position to have to answer this one. You're more than welcome to jump in. Ryan, you have no choice.
Yeah,
I'm happy to tune in on it, but this is going to be controversial. Period. Jamie, and I could have pulled from. I've had this from several. I pulled it from Jamie's because she had it pretty condensed down and directed towards Ryan.
Thanks.
Ryan, you are a connected Texas native and are the most in the know on everything Texas majors. I can argue that statement, but we're
lies, or I'd be judging them. But next,
there are many people talking about the possibility of a Texas major slicking the legs of sheep and goats before they're allowed to present them in the ring. Please give your thoughts.
Well, again, back to the point, I'm not in the know. I don't have that many friends where I'd be judging the Texas majors, and clearly I'm not. But this is a real deal. It is out there, and I would not be surprised if the show in question, and I'm not going to call that show out by name, doesn't implement this for the next year. But I'll just be real honest, I think it sucks. There's just no other way. Again, We slick sheared steers in the late 90s because we thought that was going to give little Johnny a chance to bring some pasture animal out of Grandpappy's herd and get him to the champion at Houston. It didn't happen. And slick shearing or tapering the amount of hair, or wool, or shag, or whatever the hell you want to call it, on sheep and goats at a Texas Mayor show is not going to affect who ends up winning the show. And it's not going to make it more fair. What it's going to do is just like it's done in the steer deal. The people that are really, really good at this and want to succeed and eat, live, breathe, and die getting those banners in their hands, they're going to be way more competitive. They're going to come to the top with a great deal more ease. And the divide between those people and the ones, all the others, whether they're right there at making the sale or just there to have a good time, is going to be greater. And it is going to do a disservice, a huge disservice, to the sheep and goat exhibitors of Texas. And we will look like absolute buffoons to everyone else in the livestock show industry. Is that clear enough for you, Dale?
It's very clear.
Okay.
Very clear.
You want me to go?
I would love to hear what you have to say on it.
I'm not a fan, and here's why. First of all, basically you're saying we don't trust the judges to sort through the wool and judge these things like they're supposed to be judged. And even more important than that, we as breeders, we've been trying to make these things a certain way for 20 years. And for somebody to say, well, what y'all been doing for the last 20 years is a total waste of time, in my opinion, is wrong. And besides, every high dollar sheep, and it doesn't have to always go back to dollars, but I can tell you this, every high dollar expensive sheep that even the breeders in Texas make, check that wool box, because nobody is going to give you a bunch of money for a sheep that doesn't have a bunch of wool on its legs. And that's just a fact. I didn't make that rule. I can't say that I'm 100% behind it, but if that thing doesn't have a bunch of wool on its legs, nobody is going to write a breeder, even a breeder in Texas, a bunch of money. And so what's going to happen is, if they do this, nobody is going to take an expensive sheep to that show because there's no reason to. The nice thing about what Texas has done versus any other state, Texas has valued livestock and created value of livestock more than anyone or any state, in my opinion, in the deal. And that's a good thing, because there has been people like myself and like Dale Hummel that can sit down and raise livestock and do it professionally, because we can sell sheep and goats to Texas. And that's a good thing, because there's a lot of Texas kids that have grown up, shown livestock, learned the tricks of the trade, learned what they needed to learn how to do to make good ones, and come right back in and have a really good profession. And without Texas, it wouldn't happen. And if we go this route as Texans and say, well, we're going to devalue livestock by taking a particular trade away that we've been trying to emphasize for the last 20 years, it's crazy. And Ryan's 100% right. I'm going to tell you, if they take the wool off the legs of them at that particular show, and they think that it's going to level the playing field, they're mistaken. It will not level the playing field. It'll make
the gap wider.
Good families and the medium families and the not so good families, the distance will be greater than it's ever been.
The gap between the elite and all the others will be wider. And Wade, what I think you bring up a very valid point. Not only is it something that breeders and families and exhibitors have aspired to for multiple years in terms of this, whether you like this trend or you don't, I do not care. It is real, it is out there, and it is something. My problem is, if you do this and you make this significant change at one show or all the shows, whether it's in Texas or another state, at the core of this program, the reason that I beat the roads more days than I'm at home and do all these things is because I believe in the value of it and what it does for the kids and the families and the people that are involved in it. And what you are doing when you do this, if you say we're going to slick the legs and sheep and goats, we're going to whatever, fourth an inch, however you want to shape it up. You are saying that hard work, and doing things and being successful and making yourself better in every single way in the barn, screw that. We're throwing that out the window. And that is fundamentally wrong.
Yeah. Why would you want to punish? And why would you want to punish a kid?
Not just the kids, the breeders that have raised those animals to have that.
No, and that's true too. But why would you want to punish a kid that went out to that barn every day and worked that sheep's legs?
Right. Absolutely.
And give it the same deal as a kid that never got his blower out, never got his brush out, and never even touched him. And look, here's the thing.
And it will fail as an experiment. I promise you, it will fail.
We can say you're going to punish that kid, and it's the truth. But it's been proven that y'all, it's just been proven that when more rules that diminish participation, and this will diminish participation at that particular show, okay? But more rules that diminish participation in our game, and it doesn't matter if you're showing hogs or cattle or sheep, that's a bad rule. And at the end of the day, if you look at that rule and go, will we get more sheep showers because of this rule or less? And the answer is less. Then it's a bad rule.
With both of your opinions, very well thought out, very logical. I don't know where this is going to end up, but I think the point that you guys have made, and Wade, your specific point about how Texas has been very friendly to keep the value in livestock, and that resonates in very strongly. The fact that we maybe reward the kid that isn't spending the time in the barn. There's a lot of directions you can take this, and we don't have somebody of the three of us that is on the other side, and maybe that's wrong.
No, because you'd be dumb if you were.
But it just
let me state that out loud. You would be dumb if you were.
It just, I can't imagine that champion at that major looking at it on social media or on the cover of a magazine with the legs on the goat and the lamb sheared down to 1/4 of an inch. Wow, that's going to be eye-opening, to put it mildly.
Well, here's the deal. It's going to be the same kid that's been winning.
He's just not going to like that picture.
Have a less photogenic picture.
He's just not going to like that picture.
And secondly, and even bigger, and I'm coming this from a breeder perspective, that sheep cost half of what the same one he's fixing to take to Houston 2 weeks later.
And because some may look at that as a positive.
I know they could look at it as a positive, but you can look at that as a positive and go, okay, well then you're not trying to breed and raise these things. And then when we wake up one day and go, hey, I'm trying to buy a lamb for my kid, where do I buy that thing at? Well, they all quit. And
we're already on the verge of that for sure. On the goat side.
I'm not trying to tell you that all these things need to cost $20,000. I'm not saying that. Okay. But at the same time, it costs a bunch of money. I mean, if a young family came to me and said, this is the truth, and they said, would you think it'd be better if we raised our own or buy animals? And I would say you need to buy them every time, because you'll spend
in the long run. I promise.
You'll spend a heck of a lot less money if you buy them. Okay, now that's not the approach we took, but it's just a fact. And if we devalue these things, and one of the easiest ways to devalue is to say, well, we've been working on this for 20 years. I mean, I think a good analogy is this. If you went to the Longhorn breed and said, you know what, we're gonna make you dehorn these things before you show them, it's basically the same thing. Y'all been trying to do this horn deal since the beginning of time, and for the last 20 years, we've been trying to put boot wool on a sheet and go, well, y'all just been wasting your time for the last 20 years. It's basically the same. Now here's the other thing, and this is slightly controversial, but I'll say it. If we take the boot wool off of them Okay, they're all going to look a little bit fine-boned, and they're all going to look a little bit dumb-legged. So that you put that judge, he's going to have to sort them on something. Well, we want, and I'm for this, we want less drugs in this game, and we want less extracurricular activity as far as, I don't know how to put this.
Manufacturing.
Yes, we want less manufacturing. That's what we want.
Less overnight manufacturing. Short-term
right.
manufacturing.
So we want less drugs and less overnight manufacturing. We take the boot wool off of them, and we take a criteria.
You're going to get more manufacturing in that area
on show day, and the drugs deal is going to increase, and the manufacturing is going to increase, and that's not my opinion, but that's a fact.
Instead of crunchy backs and tops, you're going to have crunchy legs. That's how it's going to happen, folks. I don't care what you say. I just tell it how it is. They will find a way.
I don't know that it's going to go to the legs, but
Lies,
they're going to make that back and that leg that much better because they have to do it somewhere.
Dale, you're fooling yourself, sir.
Yes, he's right.
You're fooling yourself. I'm telling you. You're fooling yourself.
I'm fearful, and I'm gonna step in here and I'm gonna say I don't doubt that people are genuine in their thoughts on why they would go down a path like this, but sometimes we have to
stop, Dale.
We have to stop. And think about the bigger picture. All of these things.
No, they think that this is the same bullshit that we went through in the steer deal. And we've evolved and we've elevated. You trying to defend this sends me over the edge.
Not trying to defend it.
Yes,
I'm trying to explain where their thought
process is. There is no thought process. Because what they're going to say is they're going to make it more fair. They're going to get rid of the fitters. Or they're going to do this. That is all a bunch of pack of lies. And there are more fitters in the slick-sheared steer barn than they're in the damn sheep barn across the street at San Antonio, Texas. I can prove it. I don't care what you say. It has not changed. They are there. They are going to be there. Whether you slick shear them or not, take the boot wool off, whatever you want to do. Those people are going to continue to be involved in this industry and be a part. And the ones that are in it for the right reasons, and there are a lot of them, because they love this sport, they grew up in it, they want to make a living at it, perfectly fine. There are bad apples in everything. Every single thing. You're not going to get rid of that, and freaking slick shearing the legs on a goat and sheep's not going to change it. Period.
No, I think Wade made the point. You're going to make it worse on the bad apple.
I'm going to follow up one quick deal. I know we went too long, but here's the thing. They think that they're going to get rid of the fitters on this deal. Okay,
they're not.
I know. And here's the thing. In my sport, the best fitters that we have in my sport, you don't see them on their hands and knees flipping legs anyway. Let's just call that what it is. They're telling somebody what to do. And they've earned that right. But here's the thing. In my dad's generation, and I grew up with what I consider one of the best ag teachers that ever lived, okay? But in my father's generation, the best ag kids, and it didn't matter if you were from New Mexico or Texas or Illinois or wherever, but the best ag kids at that time wanted to be ag teachers or extension guys in the 4-H thing. That's not the case now, and I wish it was. The problem with our game is that we actually need these fitters and these so-called professionals helping as many families as possible, is because they know what they're doing. And in theory, the 4-H agent and the ag teacher, like in my father's generation, he didn't need no fitter. He didn't need some guy coming in and telling him how to help his students' animals look better, because he knew. And
some of them may not even be allowed to be there because of bureaucratic bullshit at the school. But Wade, you're absolutely right. Back in the day, fitters weren't as prevalent in Texas and wherever because of the FFA teacher or the county agent. They didn't need it. They knew it.
No, they had it now. They were as good as anybody in the country.
That's right. But now, and I have preached this a million times, and I know we're running way too long, and I'm going to shut up and be done. There is still absolutely nothing wrong with a person that loves the stock show industry, wants to make a living out of it by helping other kids, whether it's through being a fitter, all this other stuff. And the fact that people in high up places in this industry think that we should end them, do as much as we can to get rid of them, hurt them, remove them, is the stupidest thing that is going right now. Because no used car salesman in Dallas, Texas woke up on a Monday morning and said, you know what? I'm going to learn to jockey a sheep. Period.
Excellent conclusion, guys. I think, and Clifton hasn't called yet, but we may have broke a record on length. Wade, thank you very much. Ryan, thank you. Until next week, be safe.
Y'all come back now, you hear?